There's no meeting to call to order. This is a working session of the Townsend Finance Committee, starting at 4:19 p.m. on November 15th. Present from the Finance Committee, Don Hayes, Mark Cressy, and Andrea Wood. We also have Teresa Morse and Eric Slagle with us in this working session. Just going through, I think at this point we'll get to the working session. We don't, I was going to, where do we want to start with discussing the warrants and go right into that, or a little overview on the new budget software?
I can certainly do the overview first.
Yeah.
If that's okay with the commission.
Yep, everybody, no objections to the
I'm
overview?
good.
Okay, Andrea?
I don't have an objection, but Mr. Eric should tell us the things as giving us information. We can make no decisions, take no votes. Remember.
Right, I apologize, I should have introduced that and added it, so. As this is a working session, and as Andrea indicated as a clerk, we can make no decisions, we can only have.
And we won't have formal minutes for this meeting either because it's technically not a meeting. I'll take notes on what we discuss, but they're just notes.
Yeah, they're working notes, not anything that,
Yeah.
well, not formal minutes, and they won't be posted and submitted to the town clerk. And then if as it is a working session, we can bring notes into the next formal meeting that we do have, and they can become part of it, the minutes at that point.
Well, in a way, technically, we're okay because we're less than a quorum. And we're discussing these things, so we're not in trouble.
Yeah.
As far as discussing things out of a public meeting with a quorum of the board, so, you know, if we shared notes, that'd be fine.
Okay, then, Eric, if you could start.
Sure. And so I mentioned when we had the joint meeting of the FinCom and the Board of Selectmen that we were in the process of exploring and applying for a grant to get ClearGov, which was budgeting software.
Yeah.
So we did apply for a community compact grant. That grant we did win.
Mhm.
We won the grant, so we got the funding for the ClearGov software. And we have been working over the last several weeks, myself and then the accountant's office, to give them the financial information that they need to set up
Mhm.
the software.
Okay.
So we are at that process, that stage of the process where they're doing the financial setup. My anticipation is sometime in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to get so kind of recontacted by ClearGov to start training.
Okay.
And at that point in time, we'll have to have people and assign them roles for the budget process, and have them start to get trained on how the software works for those roles. So, as we had mentioned, I think that we're going to give every member of the FinCom
access.
viewing privileges,
Yeah.
access to view the budget document at any time. And so that's kind of one level of privileges that you can have. Obviously, the department heads are going to have specific access to touch their portion of the budget and alter it. And then the Board of Selectmen is going to have viewing access, and probably myself and Sabrina will have access to the entirety of the budget to be able to touch any parts of it. So if the Board of Selectmen makes a determination they want to make a change, then they'll just direct us to do it. So I'm pretty excited about it because I think it will I think it'll make it easier for us to watch how the budget is getting formed as it goes along. And they're loading in kind of multiple years of historic data,
Mhm.
including expenditures, which was something I actually hadn't expected. So we're going to have actual expenditures in specific line items as well as budgeted amounts.
Okay.
So that process is going on pretty well. And hopefully by the time so it's usually late December, early January that we actually start getting numbers from
Mhm.
department heads.
Yeah.
By that time, they should be all trained and they should be able to put those directly into the software.
Yeah.
And not have to send in an Excel spreadsheet that then has to get converted into
So we
the
can
master spreadsheet. So we can start with with all the historic data in there, and they can just type in their new.
Good, that's great.
I know, it
Yeah.
should save us a lot of time,
I bet.
actually. So that's where we are with that, and the data management guy at ClearGov that I've been working with
Mhm.
seems like real sharp. Laurie Delolio, who is our accountant from Melanson, has worked with communities that have used ClearGov in the past, so she knew what they needed to get from the accountant's office. So it made the process pretty smooth from her end to get them the files that they needed to do all the to preload all the information.
I have one question. Did you say that the selectmen can change department submitted budgets without their permission?
No, the selectmen would have the ability to view the budget, just
Right.
like the FinCom would have the ability to view the budget.
Yeah, but they can't change it without working with the department first.
Right. My anticipation would be that they would only the Board of Selectmen would only be kind of taking votes during open meetings on whether or not they wanted to have the department and me kind of relook at a budget to reduce it if it wasn't.
Okay, thank you.
Right. And then budgets that aren't managed by department heads, like the IT. We don't have a department head for IT. That's why you and Sabrina would have.
Yeah. So we'll have the ability to go through all those.
Oh, yeah,
There's a ton of items in a budget that, our insurance numbers, all of our, a lot of our discretionary, a lot of our non-discretionary spending on things like pensions and healthcare that kind of live in reality, but don't really have a department attached to them.
Right.
Yeah. So we'll have to be working on all those numbers.
but it's always been that way, so that way it isn't really a change either.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it should just make the process more streamlined.
Oh,
And I
very.
think for the people who are looking at it, it will be very clear how this looks compared to previous budget.
Right.
And it won't be difficult to see if there's changes that are marked.
And as the initial is created, the initial budget created going in, are there, if the selectmen set guidelines like a 2% increase, is that applied and then auto-populated from the FY23 budget into the start of an FY24?
Yeah, so I believe that's how the process works, is that you can take your salary line, and if there's a 2% increase, it will automatically.
Well, that's unfortunately, there's the fire contract, the police contract, and
Sure.
then the others, and then the rest of the,
Yeah.
so.
But I do think that we'll be able to do that on a department level.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's that would be the way to kind of make it move relatively simply.
Okay, so it's moving along. Estimated timeline for training or anything that we need to be
So,
preparing for?
we got notified by ClearGov last week that we have all the data that we need. We're starting to populate it.
Yeah.
It should take 1 to 2 weeks to populate the data.
Mm.
And then we're going to get the training specialist is going to reach back out to us. So my guess is we're going to reach out to the training specialist. I'm hoping before Thanksgiving, But as you know, the holidays being what they are, it might be the last week in November before we hear from them. The idea would be that we get everybody trained in
In the
December.
first half.
So there'd be different levels of
Yeah.
training too, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and and there's a lot of they have a lot of kind of videos, like if you don't remember how to do
Yeah,
something,
yeah.
they've got the connection to the self-help.
Yeah.
So, but I do think it would be helpful if,
Mhm.
especially the members of the Board of Selectmen and the FinCom, just all got trained by ClearGov on how to do it.
Yeah.
And you hear things and then you hear questions and
And
might be something that you weren't thinking.
yeah, and you guys are the ones who are going to want to know what you're going to want to see, and so being able to
Exactly.
ask them directly how to see it
Yeah.
instead of asking me,
Yeah.
who's
Yeah.
never used it, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah,
We'll
so-
teach you.
yes, there you go.
Yeah.
I'll have multiple teachers. That'll be great. Yeah, so that, I think that process is moving along.
That is exciting though, that really is.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Moving along well.
And did you say that they will also be able to prepare projections based on some scenarios to look at, as a forward looking?
That's,
What's,
I mean, I think that's the goal of the going
the
back
back
and using,
data.
and doing actual expenditures is for
Yeah.
them to be able to, us to be able to immediately after a budget is passed, for us to be able to project based on the change between FY 22 and FY 23, what is FY 24 going to look like?
Yeah.
And we could do that projection in June.
Yeah.
Instead of, having to
Yeah.
wait until we get all the numbers in a box and shake them up.
May I ask a question regarding the grant?
Absolutely.
Is there anything, did the grant commit us to anything other than, for a length of time of using the software or something?
No, the grant was for 1 year for the software, and that's it. We have no commitment past 1
Oh,
year.
marvelous. Thank you.
but are there licenses that are ongoing that we'll have to pick up on the
Yeah.
town budget?
Well, so the
Sort of like the Microsoft Office.
yeah, so the answer is this: if we want to continue to use this product,
Mhm.
we're going to have to figure out a way to fund the annual cost.
Yeah.
Now, what we got the grant for was the Cadillac.
Yeah.
Because I figured we might as well see every possible
Yeah.
option they
Right.
have in their software. So that's what the grant was for. It was $21,000 for the initial setup and the annual fee
Yeah.
for the Cadillac of the ClearGov software.
Okay.
And the goal would be, I think, for us after the budget is over to have another kind of joint meeting of the Board of Selectmen and the FinCom to think,
Yeah.
did we like it? Should we commit?
Calibrate a little.
Well, yeah. Is there a piece that we're paying that we would have to pay for that
Right.
we don't really see a value in? And how are we going to pay for it? Are we going to commit another community compact grant
Mhm.
next year to try to apply for it again? Because I don't see anything in the grant cycle that would prevent us from just applying for the grant again. Or do we have more important things we want to use the community grant for, compact grant?
Do you know what
for
those
than
costs might be at all?
The cost for,
Or should you continue?
well, so it's,
I'm just curious.
it was $21,000 total.
Mhm.
Of that, $4,000 was initial setup and $17,000 was the annual fee
Yeah.
for the Cadillac of services that they have.
So we can expect another 17,000 if we want to keep.
So if we wanted to have exactly what we're getting now, it would be $17,000.
Around there, yeah.
If we only wanted to have just the personnel, like just half of it, then could be
Pay
a
less.
lesser fee. And then we're just gonna have to do a value analysis as whether or not that's the kind of thing we want to spend, commit our community compact
Mhm.
grant funds towards, or is there something else in town that we feel like it would be a better buy? And at the same token, do we want to do we want to pay for this? Do we want to come up with a way to pay for this out of the
Is
town
that
budget?
auto populated?
Can
I
we,
think each one-
once this is going, say we'd get the top of the line for 3 years and it makes the process clear to everybody. And then we decide that we don't need parts. We can go for, even though we're with this company, we can go for a lesser service later.
Absolutely.
Oh, wonderful.
You can drop off any of the, and I think there are 4 specific parts. and I apologize, I don't remember off the top of my head. And one of them is personnel, one of them is operating expenses. I don't remember what the other two are.
Mhm.
But you can choose which of those parts you want to have operable each year if you want to re-up.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, so I agree with you. Maximum flexibility is kind of what we built into this.
Sounds good.
Okay, and Teresa's probably heard all this before, so. Okay, so I think if there's no more questions, then I guess we can move on to, the special town meeting and warrant.
Yeah, and I'm realizing that I did not send a copy of this to Teresa.
Ah. And I can't,
If you, I could go and do that.
yeah, unless, I have never, I usually go onto the generic Wi-Fi and I can't do it. Is this a town guest?
Yes, that's the town's yes.
Is there a password I can get?
There is a
to?
password and I will get it for you.
Okay,
You're right back.
yeah, if we can do that, then.
Can I just look them up online?
I don't, he probably has them in a common directory. Eric stepped out to his office for just a sec. But with a draft, I don't know if it's only local in his,
Yep.
own directory. Uh,
When he does come back, I'd like to hear, if he's heard anything from any of the budget, department heads yet. And, I know you can't take any action, but, also the, meetings that I know you and him, have been attending with the school committee, just so I can get a feeling for how things are going.
Yeah, okay, he's back, so you can,
I'm back, Teresa. How are you?
Good.
So we only have had one meeting with the school committee.
and
Oh, okay.
Our next one is next Monday.
Next Monday. Okay.
And so the first one, I think I reported back to the Board of Selectmen after the day afterwards, because we met we
Yeah,
had Board of
So
Selectmen the day
there wasn't anything while I was away then.
after. No, we didn't have any meetings while you were away.
Okay, thank you.
And Teresa, you should have a copy of the draft warrant in your email.
Thank you.
Did you get on?
I did, yeah.
Have we heard from any of the other
And, yeah,
people in town? Not people in town,
the department.
departments, as far as what their budget is?
Oh, for the budgets,
Yeah.
for the, so I haven't. I went through before we met with the the school board and the representatives from Pepperell and Ashby last month, and did kind of a very quick and dirty budget. The other departments haven't come through with,
Really come through
formal
with much.
budgets. Yeah, I mean,
And they're not gonna, so you bump them.
yeah, well, they haven't been asked to, so it's not,
Okay.
it's not kind of they typically do that, like I say, end of December, beginning of January.
Yeah. I
So,
just know it's always a chore.
yeah, I mean,
It'd be nice not to have it that way this year.
yeah, well, my hope is that this software makes it way easier for them.
Exactly.
And also we can look as they're going along and say like,
Right,
hey,
right. Hey,
you haven't touched it.
Exactly. Exactly.
But to give kind of a recap, and so this is what I did talk to the school department about this, and we talked at the Board of Selectmen meeting about this. The school department came in with kind of a list of things that they had hoped to accomplish with their school budget going forward. They indicated they'd hoped to have some new positions funded. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 new positions. Not all of them are full-time, but I'm sorry, those were new positions that were added in FY23. They've got 4 new positions they're contemplating asking for FY24. Some of the positions that they are adding are because there's specific school department rules about how many teachers you have to have per number of students in the classroom. So when the classrooms reach a certain size, you have to have a second teacher, like a para, in that classroom. And so those, they indicated that some of these increases are because the numbers are just getting triggered in particular classrooms. They forecasted some budget challenges, which are similar to the ones that the town is seeing. They're having a hard time hiring.
Really?
Folks.
Oh, my God.
I know that nobody's heard of that in this economy.
Right, exactly.
We are experiencing the same
Everybody's.
challenge, so it's
I
I think it's across the world right now. And for the schools, with mandated requirements for number of humans you have to have in classrooms, what that means is they have to pay more to get people to come, is their kind of sales pitch.
Yeah.
They've also got potential school building projects outstanding. One, which I think everybody anticipated, which is Ashby Elementary School, which is a real problem. But also Hawthorne Brook is apparently something that they feel like that they're seeing in the short-term foreseeable future, need to do a renovation of Hawthorne Brook Middle School to bring it up to what Nissitissit is with respect to technology and integration of technology into the classrooms, so that all the kids that are coming to the high school have had the same exposure to the same level of technology going forward. And I can understand that.
I can too.
They also have to update their school security, which is, I think anybody who's watched the news understands why that's something you're going to have to spend money on, whether they want to or not. They did note that there was a change in enrollments over FY22. The preliminary change is Townsend was actually down 2.29%. Pepperell was up, and Ashby was basically level. So Pepperell was up the same amount that Townsend was down in percentage of estimates of students in the district. That was their early estimate. They hope to have, they're gonna have new numbers as everything gets firmed up. So that was basically their budget update. Special education for them continues to be a challenge financially, and it's not something that they can get out from under because of state requirements.
Right. Yeah.
So those are the challenges that they presented. All of the towns gave specific presentations. Pepperell's presentation was probably the rosiest. They seemed to indicate that they could absorb that they had the budget capacity to be able to absorb a 2.5% increase in the school budget without driving them into the negative. My kind of quick and dirty put us, this was a very, 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 very preliminary quick numbers, put us about 400,000 in the hole with a 2% increase in schools. That did not account for lots of different possible changes. It rolled over 2022 numbers into 2023 that I know are not going to be the same. And so, I'm hopeful that there are some changes in our numbers that'll reduce that negative down from 400,000 to something less, but it also doesn't include things like health insurance increases and and pension increases, which I know we're going to have. So, but once we get the budgeting software and get our numbers in there, sure, and we could start kind of mapping what our strategy is going to be. The Board of Selectmen has requested that I send out a budgeting letter to the department heads that basically says to budget for your 2% step increases that are required by the contracts, and try to level fund everything else. And if you're going to have a significant increase in any line, you're going to need to justify it and or show that it's cost neutral.
Just out of curiosity on the fire department, the chief, how long is the contract? Is that a 2-year contract? I know when it was posted, it said 1 or 2.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I honestly am trying to recall. I think when we signed it, it was 1 year. And then
An option.
rolls into another year if the parties
Agreed.
don't
Yeah.
want to.
Is that now a full-time position?
So that's a very tricky question, which is, that is he is the permanent fire chief. He is accepting a rate of pay, which is not a full-time rate of pay. But I don't know whether that's indicative of the fact that he's full-time or not.
Right.
I think Gary's spending a
No,
lot of time.
as he said, he spends full-time hours, but the compensation is about half of what.
Do we anticipate that changing?
Well, that's sort of the question.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, what's the contract and what's the likelihood it would be renewed at the same level? And can we then prepare
Absorb that.
and absorb going out and trying to get a full-time chief?
Yeah.
Or do, and I know last year we took the department and created 4 captains, I think it was. And so now you go 3 captains and promote one of the captains to a full-time position as chief and pick up the extra duties. It's kind of like, that's not how it was presented and put together, but those become the tougher options if you're taking if it's about a 50% compensation, what we would expect over a full-time chief, then that's gonna a 50% hit on a line is gonna, if let's say it was next year, we would maybe take it from 400 to
460.
475, 460. Yeah.
So I mean, that's
so
that's a-
kinda
that's a tough ask, and I know that I think Gary's doing a great job. I think he's really I think bringing on some quality folks to fill positions that they've not been able to fill.
Mhm.
I think we're in a better situation than a lot of surrounding
Yeah.
fire departments are.
Have we been able to fill the positions? I saw 4 or 5, no, there were a lot on the town website. We posted.
Yeah, and so there's, if you see, I think each of the last few meetings, the Board of Selectmen has been appointing
Okay.
at least one firefighter.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I think those are positive steps.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna have to do an evaluation kind of in the spring as to where we are,
Mhm. Yeah.
whether or not it feels we're ready to try to put it out for a full-time chief.
Mhm.
Last year, you, in the fire department, a full-timer per diem, I can't remember, employee was done with ARPA funds. Is that going to continue?
So that position has yet to be filled.
Oh, okay.
And so I think it's anticipated and it was a full-time position. It's anticipated that Gary's gonna fill that position, but because it's not filled at this time, because again, they had some people resign and he was backfilling those positions, that's the last position he's gonna fill, is the ARPA one.
So what happened to that money? Not what
It's good
happened to
until
the money, but I mean, it was good, say it was good for 5 years. Is it still good for 5? Because we don't have anybody there?
No, it's good till 2027.
Yeah.
We have to
Okay.
spend every dollar in ARPA by December of 2027.
Yeah,
We have to have every dollar in ARPA allocated to a specific source by December of 2025.
okay,
So those are the drop dead dates.
okay.
Up until December 2025, we can do whatever we want. We
Yeah.
could decide as a town, we don't want to do anything with the ARPA money we thought, we're going to completely change it, and we're not going to do that.
Right.
But we're
Yeah, I
not set in
see.
stone until December 2025.
Okay.
So that money, instead of covering a full-time employee in FY '23, will cover likely half of a full-time employee in FY '23 and his first 6 months of FY '24.
Okay,
It's the same thing with the police department, because there's a full-time police employee on staff funded by ARPA. But because of staffing at the police department, they haven't reached full staff, and so that
Same deal.
person isn't on board yet.
So there's money in the bucket allocated, but it hasn't had to because we've got enough
Right.
money in the.
so it just
salary bucket.
transfers.
It
Right.
transferred till that point. And so your ARPA money is gonna be, it's already chunked up, it's in the right pocket, it's ready to
Right.
go.
Yeah.
For police, but if you don't use it for that because you can't fill, you might see that, no, there's some money in the right pocket. And we gotta finish it by 2025, we definitely have to allocate it. You might move it. somewhere
Make a
to another.
change, yeah,
Make
sure.
a change.
But I think,
Yeah.
so what you're asking is, the interesting thing about ARPA money is, it's not in an annual bucket. It's in a
I see.
till
Okay, yeah,
FY
yeah.
'27 budget, December '27
Yeah.
budget.
Yeah.
And whenever you spend it, it's always gonna be there.
You just gotta do it have it allocated by the 2015.
Yes.
Okay.
My worry is not so much whether we spend it or not. My worry is that if we decide we need those positions, where are we going to get the funding?
You mean at the end of it?
After ARPA, yeah.
Yes, I mean, and
It's always been a thought.
you are 100% right about that concern, because that's exactly that's why people tell you, try not to fund long-term positions with short-term grant money.
Right.
Because you're gonna inevitably run into the question about how do you fund this? And
Especially at the rate we've been doing it.
yeah, and so,
Right, it's kind of, we have. So you got.
Well, we got the
police,
two big ones, fire and police.
You've got fire, police, the outreach,
Yeah.
community services,
and HR.
HR.
Right.
So those
So
those are 4 positions that we're gonna have to figure out.
and,
And those are, I mean, they are funded for a while.
right,
The two
Yeah, you
full-time
can't forget
positions
them.
here, but you're
But-
right. And so I am gonna try to, every year,
I
lean
don't
it
see
a
how
little
we could do
bit.
that. I
Well,
just don't
that's a-
see how we could do that.
That's a
I
I
question.
thought that last year.
One-
How can we do that? We can't save any money.
Yeah.
We need the money.
Yeah.
One of the things on the ARPA funds too is that when we talk or think about it, in general, the discussion is salary. What's a killer is healthcare and unemployment because we
May have to.
do that
may have to-
ourselves. Benefits, and in this case, they're also their operating expenses, not just his salary, but their operating expenses as well. And we have to be careful to remember to include everything when we discuss those, not just think of it in terms of salary.
Right. Yeah, and I agree with everything you say, and I do agree with you, Mark, that question about setting aside a little bit every year is easy to say. It's much harder when you
Yeah.
get down to budget time and then,
Yeah.
you know.
Look what
you're-
we just talked about. We're already maybe 475 in the hole.
Right.
Yeah.
You
And that's,
know?
you know,
Well-
it makes it easy.
The other thing to remember too is that all their initial costs are all going to go up because of the inflation, but so is everybody else's every cost.
True.
So that makes it even more difficult to find ways to appropriate the funds to hire those people full time or part time or any time at all.
I agree with you.
And that's why the forward looking, if we have the upper money in that's, to me, that's the important thing. Take a look at it where we are today, add in the upper money, where it's gonna go away when we have to come up with the money, can we still hit those, so you put in your projections for cost and you put in your projections for revenue and see, are you gonna be in trouble when they come in and they start hitting full time?
My thought is, though, these people aren't even in place yet. How bad off are the services how bad off is the fire department because he's not here? How bad off is the police department actually?
Well,
How are we spending more money in overtime to cover these guys? What is the true story? Can we survive without these guys? If we might have to, and we need to look at that.
Yeah, and
Because
those
they're
are,
not even in place yet.
yeah, and so that, I think we are right now at a spot where it feels like, we haven't had any kind of crisis
Mhm.
that's driven us off the rails budget wise for either one of those departments.
Mhm. And we all ourselves are living lean. We have to look at our departments maybe living a little bit leaner, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, I think the problem that we have is, and this is the next budget that we create is gonna be the first budget that I'm gonna have any say in, right? So, but I think is that we might need to start budgeting more realistically. And that's gonna be the opposite of what you're looking for, which is,
Well,
so
yeah,
for instance, you were all here when I had to come in at the end of the year and say, our energy costs were 70,
right.
what was it, $45,000 more.
But we all know
Because they-
it's going up, so, we need to put that in, and that's what you're saying. I
But
understand.
when we put that in, it's gonna create a crisis somewhere else.
Yes.
How do we
yes.
solve that
Right,
crisis?
exactly.
Because is it gonna create a crisis with the school
We
department
know that's
budget?
gonna happen.
Is it gonna create a crisis with, our contractually
That's
obligated
why I'm saying,
salaries?
can we get away with maybe what we don't have right now?
Yeah,
And we're trying to pay for it.
I was gonna say, just quickly looking at, and again, we have to remember, we had a brush fire this year.
True that, yeah.
a huge.
Yeah.
So what I just did is I looked at fire EMS, and we're 4.5 months in, and we're at 70% used on the overtime budget. So to your point, we're probably making up on the short labor, plus we had the large catastrophe that we had
Right.
You know,
Right.
it's kind of like, it wasn't a catastrophe. It was they
It was
managed
a catastrophe to the budget.
to their budget, but it was a very good job to keep that managed and under control. So it didn't get out of
Oh,
control and become a significant event to the town. And those are the things that we need to look at, and maybe we don't have enough in our reserve account, because those are the kinds of things that I anticipate a reserve account would be able to be used for,
Correct.
is we had so much overtime because of the fire. Can we come in and ask for a transfer from the reserve fund and move it into overtime for fire, because we protected the town and
Yeah.
did our
Right.
job. and
If
we
you
had-
got it in the reserve fund.
Right, and right now it's only 40,000, so we are very judicious about how we use the reserve fund and
Right.
and what we
Mhm.
transfer it to.
Right.
But that's the kind of thing I just got this report 5 minutes before the meeting.
Yeah.
So I haven't had a chance to go line by line, but when you had that question, I was able to go.
Mhm.
But you know, I do have regular meetings with both Jay and Gary about kind of budgeting and where they stand, and notwithstanding that number, Gary is comfortable because his salary lines are lower.
The other salary lines are lower, it's the overtime.
Yeah,
Mhm.
the overtime's high
Yeah,
because the other salary lines are lower.
Yeah.
And you know, that's not kind of exactly what we want, but
Yeah.
you know, it's, you know, they,
Right.
you know,
Yeah, and we'll go, I'm just looking at firefighter paramedics, and that's at 15.65%
Yeah.
so far this year, so that's.
That's more in line.
Well, that's way below, it's kind of like, I'd expect. as a
yeah, you should be
minimum about
slightly above
50%.
34%.
Yeah, 34% is the third, this was through today, so it's three, so.
That
It's
is
something
pretty
to
good.
36%, something
Yeah.
like that.
If you're under 36% now, you're on,
And would you say 15, almost 16?
yeah,
That's pretty darn good.
well, that's, I mean,
But
but
that's
that's,
But that's probably making up the overtime.
yeah, but
because-
that's how.
Oh, I
they
see, yeah.
That's
Okay,
it.
yeah.
So their total salary lines in the fire department are at about 28.
Yeah.
Percent.
Right. Yeah.
Including that 70% overtime.
Including that overtime,
And
that's,
including that overtime. So when you, the total sum is, is looking
I see
at
where
it,
you're going, yeah.
but it gets to that point of, when you look at a specific line, you have to, it's a
Yeah.
line that,
Look at the other lines and,
but that's also the telling line, are we burning people out because we're asking them to do too much overtime?
Yeah.
It's kind of like,
Okay.
and to your question, do we need the positions? Yeah, you probably want rested firefighters
Mhm.
rather than paying overtime.
Yeah.
It kind
But
of-
again, that was something that doesn't always happen.
That doesn't.
Thank
happen.
goodness.
That's-
Right,
Yeah.
That was a-
exactly.
That was a tax thing on not
So
just
we don't
us,
have
but
both ways,
I think
right?
there were 16 municipalities that ended up sending
Mhm. Right.
firefighters to that.
Right, the
Fire.
municipal aid is.
So is that part of that number or, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so
We have
then
mutual aid
it wasn't
agreements
all
that-
just Townsend.
Oh, yeah, well, so
No,
that number is just
Yeah,
Townsend.
that's what I thought, okay.
That's just
what I-
Townsend.
Okay, yeah.
But so for instance, the state just gave Ashby $200,000 to help
For the
cover
entire
their
fire?
costs,
Yeah.
Mhm.
for the.
Is that something
fire.
we're looking into, or do you know? Some
Um,
reimbursement from the state for that?
So I know that, so I don't think it would be forthcoming, because, I think that it kind of was like,
Not that big of a deal, right?
yeah, well, yeah, on a statewide level, I think
Mhm.
if you look at Ashby's budget and the amount of money they spent, it was, the $200,000, their overtime
The
budget is
percentage
probably,
of their budget.
the- their firefighting budget is not huge. Yeah,
Okay.
but we are in a position now where we're not exceeding the firefighter budget despite that. But I do think, there's
Yeah.
probably a need for
It-
for more bodies.
Mhm.
Exactly, yeah, one line doesn't.
Well, I'm not saying, I'm
Yeah.
just, well, it's all questions we gotta ask, because
Mhm.
if we're already thinking we're 450 or whatever, we gotta look, we gotta,
Oh, yeah,
And that's 450 before we
before we
haven't
even get
taken,
started.
we hadn't taken in, we had that list of capital budget items that we didn't do last year.
Last year, that's
It's kind of
right.
like, we took all our.
And we're still gonna spend more money out of 20. Oh, this is 23,
Well,
right?
that's, yeah, so this is 23.
Right.
Kind of like, we haven't started,
I know, and I'm looking, I'm going, here we go, we're already broke again.
But this
This isn't a whole bunch, I know, but
and
it's
this is
enough.
all, this is a free cash thing.
Right, but
Where we're trying to use, but this is trying to use money left over from FY 22 so that we don't have to spend FY 23 or FY 24 money on it.
Right.
So that's the goal of these expenditures.
And have we got the certification?
No.
Yeah. So we, yeah.
so we don't.
So we know the number that we had left at
At the bottom of the, yeah,
at the end of the,
number, yeah.
at
At the
the-
end,
well, no, we knew the number we had left at town meeting.
mhm.
There was just about $200,000, slightly less than $200,000.
We spent some this summer, right?
No,
That wasn't,
that was after there's May 10th, Springtown meeting.
yeah,
After that, we had 194,000.
Right.
So we know we've got at least 194,000 in free cash going into this
From
special
FY
town meeting.
22, so, not FY,
FY 21.
Yeah.
okay,
So we had that 124, we selected from the list, which were the important ones, and said, okay, free cash is gonna pay for these.
yes,
It's
yes,
kind of like, and then this list we can't get to. And we were going back and forth always about what can we add in, what we can, because we were doing that till the last, I mean,
but it's
it
a
was
second,
numbers, yeah, they were printing copies of the budget
Yeah, and so
as people were walking in. That's,
to move to the warrant,
yeah,
this
yeah, let's,
this is understanding that we don't have the certification of free cash yet.
mhm,
okay,
And these are the requests that were deemed kind of important enough to put on
Yeah.
on the warrant, or came from departments that I don't have control over, and those are asks that I,
mhm.
but what did you say you thought the number might come in at for free cash?
Oh, I have
We don't know, it's kind of like with,
no clue.
at the bottom.
194, no,
No, the 194 is what we knew we already
what you
had
know already had.
That was-
from FY 21.
That was 21,
Oh,
so
oh, I'm sorry,
FY 22, the closest you can probably do is like a number here at the bottom
yeah,
of all the expenses, you can say, how much did we budget? And how much was there? But what you don't have is how much revenue actually came in.
And how much encumbrances were rolled over.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's
Oh,
kind of like,
there's-
so there's still some work on that number, but if you're roughing it, you might take that number and subtract 20%, say, or something like that.
to be safe,
Well, no, it's not safe, it's just, you know,
It's roughing it. It's a very, very.
yeah,
rough
yeah,
number.
okay, all right,
yeah, it's just a rough number to say, we think there's some cash there, but, you know,
Yeah.
to say what it is.
And we also, the other thing that's important to think about when doing this whole evaluation is to know that ideally, you're gonna use some of this free cash from FY 22 to pay for snow and ice
all right,
come the spring.
right,
Like, lots of towns don't, lots of
Yeah.
towns kick it out further, pay for it with next year's money, because you're allowed to legally.
yeah,
But the best practice is to pay with last year's money.
It,
sure,
which last year was, we went, what, about 190 over.
Yeah, so like 200,000 over.
right, we had a lot of
Yeah.
ice, I remember.
We had a
that.
lot of ice and then we had one storm a week.
In the end,
budget,
wasn't it?
in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
It's kind of
yeah,
like we had to pick it up one more time.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
like,
and then we were all praying, no more, no
No
more.
more, no more.
So if you want, I can walk through the warrant relatively quickly.
Yeah, like because we're at
Five.
507 and
Yeah.
and it's kind of like we.
And obviously, we can't make any
Coming in.
Right,
We can't.
deductions.
Andrea, I did forward you the email with the Word document attached with the warrant articles, if you wanted to have it open, and follow along.
Thank you.
So the first article is just to get a report, so that's not a
Yeah, there's no financial.
no
impact.
financial input. The second article is just the PEG access article, so that's money that's coming in from Comcast. We're just giving it to TCAM. There's no financial
Mhm.
impact from that one. Article 3, in the annual town meeting, there was a clerical error in Article 15, which was we closed down a bunch of old warrant articles and put them in a stabilization.
Yeah.
And the math was all, one of the warrants had money taken out of it like the week before town meeting and it just didn't get into there, so.
Yeah.
So this is
So
just
this is-
correcting that error, but it doesn't have any financial impact on the kind of the budget or anything, it's just on how much money went into, the
Yeah, so.
stabilization.
Okay,
Yeah.
so in that case, we had a number, we got the number, they took some money out and we transferred over what was left anyway. It's kind of like, so this was already, yeah.
So there's not, but it's not coming out of any kind of,
No,
Cash,
that
right.
was, no, but understanding that and I tried to help put that together with a pivot table to keep it, so that one I was tied closely into.
Article 4. So this was the warrant article from town meeting in 2019 to fix the roof on the rec center.
Mhm.
It came in and was completed under budget, and so we wanted to repurpose the funds relating to that to do the stairs in front of the rec center need to get done, and also there's some work that needs to get done on the flat rubber roof here at Memorial Hall. And so the idea would be to repurpose the remaining money of that warrant. Again, it doesn't have any current fiscal year impact or free
Is there-
cash impact.
Is there an amount?
I think I could give you an amount, I think it's $28,000 is what's remaining in that account.
But will that be
Change.
in the article?
But there'll be no additional funds. It's just a repurpose.
It's a
Correct.
repurpose, but I think they should,
If you'd like, I can put if you put the amount and the amount in there as
I
well.
think so,
Okay.
it's kind of,
Oh, yeah.
yes, I think there'd be a question into, how much is there?
How much is left? to be
Is-
Yeah, how
repurposed?
much went here and there.
Okay,
Right,
we can do that.
and, we don't have this. Is it gonna go into like a building maintenance fund in the building maintenance department and then and then they pay the contractors to come in and do it? I don't think it's going in, I don't think.
No, it's-
Recreation has a budget line for,
Yeah, no, I don't, it's not gonna go to facilities budget, it's gonna stay in the old warrant. And then the warrant's just gonna be repurposed. And then the uses for it will be the stairs at the rec
Okay,
center, the roof at town
Yeah.
hall, and
Okay.
I know there was $20,000 last year in capital money done to redo the outside of town hall, that's not
Mhm.
gonna be sufficient, so they're gonna spend the remainder of that on that, so it's gonna be those three.
Yeah.
Article number 5, our elevator,
Mhm.
failed inspection.
Okay, yeah,
It was safe to continue to operate, we're allowed to continue to operate it until the end of December,
90 days.
but we have to have the work done by the end of December in
Mhm.
order to do it, it's about an $8,000 hit, so. We want an elevator in town hall, which we have to have for ADA purposes,
Exactly.
we have to spend that.
especially with,
That's cheap, $8,000 to fix an elevator.
Oh, yeah, you
Usually
know
with
how
the
much those
tax-
cost? Yeah.
I know what it costs.
Yeah,
you got any contacts?
none of it, it's union, believe me, you got no.
so that's Article 5. Article 6 is to cover an unbudgeted increase in our insurance. We level funded insurance based
Okay,
on the
that's-
FY 22
Yeah.
amount.
Yeah, I think that
Insurance
was-
rate went up. We also just got audited for our workers' comp, and our audit indicated that we need to pay an extra premium because our salaries were higher than they thought they were gonna be.
Okay.
And so,
That's all included in here.
yeah, that $29,000 includes all of those lines. Article 7 is an attempt to forego what happened to us last year, which is massive deficit in our energy line item. I just don't, I know that the facilities department last year attempted to cover that energy shortage by not spending other lines
Mhm.
to the tune of, I think, 30 grand. And that's not good practice because they need to spend that other money on other things.
Oh, sure.
They shouldn't
Yeah.
have to spend money that they need to spend on maintenance of our buildings on electricity.
Yeah.
And so that $75,000 is an attempt, and that's just quite frankly, it's a shot in the dark.
Mhm. As I said earlier, probably before you know, we're just getting started on heating season. so
Yeah.
we don't know.
So we have no idea of knowing what it's gonna be. And Unitel's rate increases go into effect soon, but
Yeah.
December, right?
December 1.
we are negotiating, to aggregate the town's buildings and get a lower rate from a private,
Okay.
private electric
Hook me
company.
up with that?
We're actually working on that.
That would be, great. You know, I think that a lot of people would be interested.
We are doing municipal aggregation, so hopefully sometime soon we'll have something for the whole town.
That'd be
Where
cool.
we're gonna get lower rates than what we're paying Unitil, but it's very easy to do it for town buildings
Mhm.
and harder to do it for everybody in town. So we're doing the town buildings first. As a matter of fact, we're voting on that tonight, and the rate should be significantly lower than what we would pay Unitil. So this is kind of a hope that that's gonna,
That's enough. With getting a reduced rate.
we're getting a reduced rate and, you
Add a
know,
little bit
yeah.
To the account, yeah.
Yeah,
maybe
so
it'll
that's,
work
that's
out.
our hope, yeah. The $25,000 is to cover two parts of the accountant services. We all knew when we signed up for Melanson that the accountant salary line item was not sufficient to cover the Melanson contract.
Mhm.
So a portion of this $25,000 is for that. The other portion is unfortunately, when we signed a contract with them at the end of the year, for them to cover the end of FY 22 and close the books.
Yeah.
That contract was, they estimated the costs were gonna be $35,000. The costs have exceeded that. And so the remaining 15,000 of this is to cover, excess costs from
Mhm.
FY.
I thought the contract said not
Not to
30,
exceed.
not to exceed 35,000.
No. That was just they estimated that the cost of the work to close FY 23 would be $35,000. So all we encumbered for that contract was $35,000.
And so closing the books on FY 23, was it? to
Sorry,
cover
FY 22.
22, was that also so that they could cover and do their work for the audit that they would have to do for FY 22? Were they doing the audit for? FY
This doesn't have anything to do with the audit.
Okay.
This is
No.
just closing up the books. And
Okay, but not preparing the books so that they can,
This is doing everything that the accountant's office does to prepare for an audit, but it's not, Melanson's auditing services are not, because they're not our auditor for FY 23.
no, but they are for FY 22. So they would be,
No, they're not our audit, well,
FY 22 is gonna should be in the audit process now.
but I think that was for, yeah, so FY 22 is the audit process now, but that's a completely separate contract from this 35,000.
Yeah,
It is, but I'm looking at, if I pay you to do this on this contract, I'm already getting my audit money, so you do extra work, charge the town as the town accountant preparing for it. I just,
Yeah, so so,
you know, if,
They already did the work. you mean?
but
well, but
Melanson is not our FY 22 auditor though.
who is? We're not about, the FY 23 is the new audit company.
I don't think so, because when we talked to Melanson, they're like, it was nice meeting you guys. Thanks, bye.
Okay,
We won't see
I thought they were for.
Because that would have been I think that would be a conflict of interest if we had the
Right.
same auditor and the same accountant
That's where I was going.
working on the same thing. So, but I think we're done with Melanson as an auditor, and the other entity is started up their auditing work.
Okay, yeah. Okay,
You know, so this year that's being audited will be, and last year FY 22
Mhm.
is going to be
yeah.
audited by them. But I can
My-
double check. I don't have.
My audit papers are at home.
Yeah, I don't have my audit stuff in front of me. The Article 9 is, the town clerk's vault, the heating and AC unit in the town clerk's vault is failing.
Yeah.
And obviously those are vital records that we can't have
Yeah.
in a non-climate controlled space. And so, that's that. We are also looking to see if that might be eligible for green communities
Mhm.
funding. There's another round of green communities in April, but we wouldn't get the money until, if we got approved, until next year around this time. We're not sure whether or not that unit's gonna last, so
What is that? Just a regular air conditioning unit, split system?
Air conditioning and humidity and,
your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a standard unit. because the Intervault systems, I think, is for.
So it's humidity control.
It's like what they have. It's like what they have at the Vatican for all those sacred documents. No, I don't know that. That's making that
One
up.
step down from there. But they have to control humidity.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Because you don't want your documents getting moldy.
Yeah.
and
Right.
all that. So it's not just air conditioning, it's the,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So that's the quote that we got is for.
Yeah. more maintenance. But
Yes, 10,000 to cover the expenses to repair the council on aging and library roof and insulation inside that's starting to deteriorate. And so, somebody had said to me that they thought that somebody was supposed to do this.
yes, I,
So I need to follow up on that, but in the event that that's not the case,
Yeah.
the repairs have to get
It was-
made.
when they were doing the addition to the senior center.
Yep.
The donor said, I will cover the repair on the roof that needed to be done.
Yep.
So this looks like, it was about $50,000, I think, estimate added on to, so there was the senior center plus a $50,000 roof. So this that's sort of the question is.
Yeah, so that's on me to try to track down by December.
Yeah.
To figure out whether or not we actually have to pay. And if somebody else is covering this, or it's gonna be less, I will take it off, but unfortunately, I gotta keep it on.
Yeah, the library and the trustees probably have it on, but that was the case.
Well, no, this is coming from Rob. This doesn't have,
Okay.
this is the,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
this is coming
Yep.
from Rob, so.
Okay.
Facilities department.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, and again, it might be something separate, but that's unfortunately, I don't know if you'll be able to find anything on that because it was an article on the draft. And because the person stepped forward to donate the extra money to cover the extra work,
Right,
it disappeared.
I know. So I have to
It's
ask
kinda-
the right people the right questions
Yeah.
about that.
It's kind of like, that's awful. It's kind of like, we got a
But
document.
they backed out of it?
No, it's kind
Oh.
of, so the senior center expansion was donated
Right.
by a very generous donor.
Sure.
We were having trouble with the leaking roof at the library. And so that donor said, I'm paying for this expansion. I will pay for that so you don't have to worry about a leaking.
So
roof."
maybe just the
So-
repair got done and the damage inside was unknown and now we.
Maybe.
Yeah, and so I just
Could be
need to double check
Yeah,
on
could
that.
be inside versus outside.
Yeah,
But-
yeah.
And that was the thing. There was gonna be an article presented at town meeting to allocate the money. But it disappeared when the donor came to provide.
Oh,
So I just have to do some
And
follow up.
there was some work, I think, Board of Selectmen may have some knowledge of it, because I think they had to get approvals and insurance and statements of work that
Yeah, and
they were covered for.
yeah, and so the question is whether this was contemplated at that time, or is this a new
Is
leak?
this a new, yeah,
okay.
exactly.
Yeah,
It,
yeah.
it kind of,
The next one is, we've been doing a lot of work, vetting different companies to redo the town's entire website.
yeah,
We got some very competitive, bids to come, or not bids, but, proposals to come in. And, the Board of Selectmen would like to go with a company called Revise, which has done a lot of municipal websites, and they offer a lot of, a much more kind of user-friendly, website, and kind of web experience for both the front end for the customer, but also the back end for the folks who have to deal with the website. And so this is the, to put on, to have that, to cover the expenses for that.
So there's an annual fee coming up, but it's not 11,000, right?
No.
Yeah.
The annual fee is the same. Well, I think it's $200 more a year than our current
Mhm.
website annual
Right.
fee.
Yeah.
But we're paying our year for our current website fee, and we're gonna be also hiring to have a new website
Mhm.
and paying the first year fee for that. So after that, it's gonna be absorbed into the budget. We'll just have to raise the annual fee.
Sure.
Very small. This is the pickup truck for the facilities department. We kind of discussed that. This would require a negotiation with the union and the employee to remove the employee vehicle stipend that currently is for that employee. So that's $6,000 a year. So, this would, save us
Mhm.
that stipend amount.
So they got
Yeah.
a truck in mind, I'm just curious. They come up with a 35. I know they did before.
And
So we've kind of tried to get updated quotes. If you've tried to look at a
Oh my God,
vehicle
it's ridiculous.
anytime in the last year, I'm not sure so I have on my desk, a 2022, Chevy Silverado extended cab, used with, 12,000 miles on it for
Yeah,
29.
yeah, so that's
I
probably.
was gonna say,
And so that's what I'm kind of like
Yeah,
shooting for,
yeah,
is like,
yeah.
you can get a late model,
like my,
relatively low miles, used.
because I don't expect that there's gonna be a lot of miles put on.
Yeah, it's more, the body's gonna take a lot more damage than the engine,
Right.
because it's not taking trips to,
Yeah. It's not a major commuting.
it's not gonna take it, it's not gonna use a ton of gas, it's not gonna have a ton of
Yeah.
miles put on it, because it's just between the town facilities. But I think,
He doesn't want to plow with it or nothing, right? Just,
yeah, no, I mean, would it be great to have a plow extension on it so that you could plow this? I mean, that'd be great, but that's not the plan. The plan is just to have a basic run-of-the-mill pickup truck.
And
And unfortunately, that's what a basic run-of-the-mill pickup truck costs.
yeah, no, I know, believe me.
I'm going.
Maybe I should sell mine. and use that.
What's an EV go for?
I mean, so a Rivian, which is the electric pickup truck,
Yeah.
that's like 70.
Okay.
Or,
It-
yeah,
New though,
Ford's
right?
coming up-
brand new.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you can't get them
You
used.
can't
They're
get 'em
used.
And Ford's coming out with the F-150.
The Lightning.
Yeah.
So you could, and I think that one's probably gonna be around the 60s.
Okay. Yeah.
So that would be great. I would love to do
Trying to
that.
think of where we're
Then
going
put
with
the
it,
charging station in and.
Put the charging station in,
but
get some solars.
there are grants
For
for.
it,
charging
yeah,
stations.
yeah,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
It's kinda like-
and there are grants for electric vehicles,
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's definitely, it's not an unreasonable thing to do. If we had that money and we could say, hey,
Especially when it stays right in town or goes to Fitchburg once in a while.
yeah, an electric, an F-150 Lightning, an all-electric vehicle, like that would be great. I would love to,
And
Yeah, do that.
they're not used yet either, so.
Yeah.
And to me, it's the usage and battery, when the battery's gonna die and what's the life of the battery? And
right.
I
And the
just
other,
bought a used electric fork truck. 27,000. Without a charger.
there you go. The next one was submitted by the library trustees. I think, so they are gonna be the one presenting this. What they've said to me is, they believe that that right before town meeting, because the schools came in and changed their numbers, lots of departments got money put back into their departments and or positions and hours restored, and they felt like they didn't. So this is what they believe they need to make themselves whole. I'm not gonna take a position on that.
Mhm.
The next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 articles are, the first one is just a transfer from the
Water department.
sale lots, cemeteries fund.
Yeah.
Oh,
And the next 4 water departments that are coming directly from the water enterprise fund.
Oh, but okay, let's close out the account for the fusing machine. That's fine, so that's if they bought it and put it back in. The plotter scanner, same thing, it's kind of like, these were all approved in annual town meeting, and it looks like they didn't expend the total that we had.
Yeah, so they're closing out a few of those.
Yeah. Yeah.
So. And then,
and then buying a penetrating radar unit with the leftover money.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So.
I've seen water departments that have those ground penetrating radars. They really actually do save a lot of time.
Oh, I'm sure they do.
Mm.
And there's things you don't have to dig,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and that's nice. And,
They used to use the welding rods and go around like this.
it's one way to find
It
water.
actually works. It
Yeah.
actually works, though.
And the next one came from the Board of Health to, authorize the deposit of tobacco fines into the Board of Health revolving account for tobacco education and education materials.
Do we have any, is there a separate account? When we have this, do we know how much the money's be estimated? Do we know?
That is an excellent question for the Board of Health.
Yeah.
They're the ones who wanted this.
Okay, wait, okay, yeah.
My understanding of it is that there are several entities in town that have triggered these tobacco fines, and so the tobacco fines ratchet up a lot to several $1,000s.
Mhm.
So they'd like to be able to recoup that money if they do find them, to turn it around to use it for education.
What are tobacco fines?
Oh, the
Selling
minors.
a minor multiple times.
Is this just something
It's
that happens?
$1,000 for your first one, and like 2,000, and then 3,500 for your next two.
So this is all violations within the town? Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
It's like-
and that's why I say it's kind of like, what's the fund? If we're setting up a revolving fund, are they just gonna bury it in the current board? Are they gonna have another revolving fund that they create
Mhm.
with this and maintain it as a separate, like they do the revenue from the transfer
Recycling,
station? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, so that they can be a
So
seen
this-
and accountability.
Yeah,
At the end of the year,
exactly.
what's the balance in the account?
Right.
Is it something that we can transfer back to general fund?
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
good to let them have it, but let's put the maximum on the limit on the account. So I
Right.
think maybe
right.
that one needs setting up the account that goes along with it.
To set up a separate revolving
A
fund just for
separate-
the,
I think so. Other than that, you're gonna group recycling and recycle center and
tobacco all in
tobacco
one.
all in one. It's
Right.
kind of like, and you're not gonna be able to separate and know which one's giving you.
No, that's a,
Do we find now?
they do, but,
Where's the money go now?
if it's not going to a revolving fund, it's general fund money.
Oh. Well, maybe it'd be nice to keep it in the general fund.
You think like me, Andrea, that's what I was thinking when I saw this. I said,
Yeah.
wait a minute.
Well, and that's the thing. That's why I want to know what the money, what are we talking for money and how much? Could we put is there a line in the Board of Health for Education that you can spend some of that into tobacco? It's kind of like.
Yeah.
It's sort of open-ended. It's kind of like,
Yeah, so I didn't get any other specific details
Yeah.
from the Board of Health about this, so. The next things are, there's two zoning, one regular non-criminal disposition and one real estate.
Yeah.
But not
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
financial ones.
well, I was gonna say, if we're collecting money for the offense, then it's gonna be enforced by the board, by the building inspector. Is that going into one of his funds? Or is that a general fund?
That's a general fund, that's a general fund.
Yeah.
And this is just for the lighting bylaw, because it didn't
Right.
have a.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say, I haven't heard much on this. It's kind of like Pepperell's had a big.
Yeah. The two zoning ones have to do with the age restricted development. The planning board's having a meeting on that tomorrow night. To finalize
Finalize the wording.
the wording.
They've been going on with that for a while.
yeah, so that's two. And the real estate one, which is the very last one, is to authorize the Board of Selection to enter into a 20-year agreement for the Spalding with the school district. This one, I wanted to redo because the last one specifically said including Pheasant Field
Mhm.
as part of the leasehold to the,
Yeah.
and we want to withhold that from the
Right,
schools.
Yeah,
And
that
keep
would be
that as
good.
a town.
Okay, that's a good
Control.
idea. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
How much is the lease, do you know?
How much do they pay us?
Yeah,
$0.
Mhm.
that's always nice.
And so
I went to school there. That has got to be the most, I have the best memories of that school.
the Spalding,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
and there we go. That's the,
Thank you. It's
That's
kinda
the
like,
one.
that was long and we gave you questions to. So now you gotta get a quick fight.
yeah, now I
Yeah,
got,
you got to move on. That's right.
yeah, I got a whole nother meeting to go to after this. Me and Teresa.
Maybe I'll
Teresa's
sit
gotta
back,
do
have
that
dinner and watch you.
too. Just stay. Just
No, I
stick
know.
around. You only half an hour.
Why,
till
you
it's
serving?
I was gonna say, last week, there was stuff set up over there.
Was it really?
Yeah, well, that's because it was set up for the next morning or after cleanup after voting.
Do you think if the Board of Selectmen got a one-day liquor license, they'd have more participation at the Board of
But
Selectmen
we
meetings?
get free lunch every Thursday at work and we get more people.
Oh, well, I bet, yeah.
Yeah, we used to have happy hour Fridays. It's been like 4 o'clock. Somebody was in charge of the key that was on the with the refrigerator. And 4 o'clock, go down.
That's the private sector.
That was, yeah.
Although, when I worked in Lowell, people before me said, oh, yeah, back in the old days,
Mm,
Friday afternoons, they used to
Yeah.
unlock the lower cabinet.
Yeah,
unlock the lower door.
I
Yeah,
remember going to companies that they had kegs. They had a keg.
yeah, oh, yeah, like,
Their snack rooms.
because you can do that because you're a private entity. If I did that here, yeah, that would be hard.
I've got it better than all of you. I've always worked at home, so every hour can be happy hour.
Nobody's watching over your shoulder, right?
Wow.
Good for you, Andrew.
I was gonna say, I had that for 10 years and I
You
never,
never partook?
no, it's kind of like, it was. But I was working also about, it's kind of like, you have to do Asia Pacific at 9, 10, 11.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
right.
You can't finish East Coast time and still
It's, yeah,
deal with that. So,
all right.
well,
Are you gonna set something up for another meeting?
I will send something out for another meeting. We obviously have to go through this about 24 articles, so we should,
And now,
meet
so
soon.
the Board of Selectmen is gonna vote on the articles tonight.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll get, and then that'll get posted. Needs to get posted the 29th,
Okay.
because that's, you
Now-
posted 2 weeks before.
Yeah. Now, I guess there was something that I didn't see on there. For instance, the library added a new position. There was an assistant director and now they're hiring the, young adult replacement. So when we change a budget like that, the budget changes, you have a new position. Should there be a warrant on it that we're looking at?
That's the library trustees.
Okay. So,
We don't vote on specific positions at town meeting. We vote on a general budget for the library.
Right.
And then under that, the library trustees have the authority to fiddle around.
That's all they got is what we give them.
Yeah, and as long as they're not exceeding that dollar,
okay, but now they've added a position which changes it. If they fill both positions, the dollars will go over what we said last year. It's kind of like, so then next year, they'll be coming into it with an extra position and funding both for a full year. So it looks like there's no change, but there is a change.
right?
And they do this every year.
Oh, maybe we gotta, maybe this is the
Yeah.
time we start.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Talk about
well, I think one of the reasons why we have this, why we're gonna have this budgeting software is to be able to say, last year you were budgeted for X dollars, now you're asking for Y dollars,
And you
And
have a
we see
position
there's a
in the
new
middle of the
position.
year.
what's the change,
But
you know?
when we do that, it's kind of like now let's say we hired somebody for both positions and we don't approve it and they've got to lay somebody off. Now we get kicked in with the,
With the unemployment.
Unemployment.
Yeah.
on top of it. It's kind of like,
Yeah,
it's,
yeah,
we're doing these changes mid-year that have an impact on the budget, but we're not coming back to the budget and saying, yes, it fits and we want to do it. Even if it is the library trustees doing it, that they had money to start with, but it's kind of like,
yeah,
we have to start accounting all year, not just once a year on
yeah.
the budget.
I hear what you're saying, and
If you've added a position, you've changed what the total budget would be if that was fully funded for the whole year. It's kind of like adding a position and partially funding it and skating in under the budget number last year. We're gonna get to a large increase next year. And,
And if not, we're gonna be paying unemployment insurance.
yeah,
Well, I think the answer kind of, I think is from our perspective, you know, again, the letter that the library trustee is gonna get as kind of a department of the town is you're expected to level fund your budget with only, you know, required salary increases, which they have none.
Right,
You know, they have no required salary increases unless
Other than the director.
somebody has a director that has a contract.
yeah, I don't know if the new assistant director was a contract either though.
Yeah.
Kind of,
I don't know.
that was a new.
Guys, I gotta go.
Yeah,
Okay.
so.
I'll see
and-
you, yeah, let me know when the meeting is and.
Um,
Days work for me.
The work session is ended, Hartley, so if you can end it and save it, we'll be good.